Hello, I'm James Milan, and welcome to Arlington Public News' ongoing coverage of the 2014 Massachusetts state elections. In anticipation of the upcoming primary, we are here today for a debate between the two candidates for the Governor's Council. On my left is Marilyn Petitto Devaney, and on my right is Charles Shapiro. I'm going to first explain what the format of the debate is going to be. It will be a 1-hour debate, recorded live with no edits, and here in the studio. There has been no pre-screening of the questions that will be asked. The way the format will work is that there will be a 1-minute opening statement from each of the candidates, and then we will proceed to a series of 11 questions that I will choose at random from a bowl of them here in front of me, and the candidates will respond in round-robin fashion. They will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The candidate to whom I ask the question will have 2 minutes to respond, and then there will be 1 minute for the other candidate to rebut. After that series of questions is done, the candidates themselves will have an opportunity to ask 2 questions each of the other candidate. And in that case, after 30 seconds with which to pose the question, the person answering the question will have 2 minutes to respond, and there will be a 30-second rebuttal from the one who asked the question to begin with. At the end of that, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement, and we will move, and that will conclude the debate for today. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Mrs. Devaney to make your opening statement.
Yes, thank you. Hello, I'm Marilyn Petitto Devaney, and I am your Governor's Councillor, and I've been very proud to represent you these years. And now I'm asking for your vote on September 9th so I can continue working for you. I promised that I would make real reforms on the council, and I did. I stopped the practice of councils accepting monies from the nominees they were voting on through the governor's order, executive orders, and also changed the parole board. We have now a member who can identify inmates' learning problems and mental issues to enter into the society. I have a progressive record through the years, standing up for women. Recently, in Boston, on stage with the women's rally, and for the Stonewall Democrats, and also for veterans. I serve on the Executive Council of the American Legion, and I have been awarded for my 22 years on the Commission of Disability for my advocacy for
Thank
disabled.
you very much. And we will now move to a 1-minute opening statement from Mr. Shapiro.
Great. Thank you, James, and thanks to everybody here at Arlington Community Media. It's a privilege and an honor to be here, and thank you for taking interest in the Governor's Councilor race. My name is Charlie Shapiro. I am a third-generation Newton resident. I was an alderman for 2 years in the city of Newton. While I was an alderman, I also did something a little bit broader, and that was called the Silver Alert. And the Silver Alert basically is like the Amber Alert, but for folks with Alzheimer's. So if somebody goes missing, we can try to find that person faster, bring them home safely. I was so proud of that program, especially when Governor Patrick came to Newton, credited us with the creation of that program, and took the program statewide. It's helped people stay safer, and some of those folks are some of our most vulnerable citizens. I'm running for Governor's Councilor for many reasons, and I look forward to the discussion today, and I would appreciate your support and your vote.
Thank you very much, and we'll proceed right to the questions now. The first question will be directed to you, Mr. Shapiro, and it is, why should Massachusetts continue having a Governor's Council?
Sure. There's a couple of reasons, and they're very important. First, since I have the 2 minutes, let me just tell a little bit about what the Governor's Council is and why I feel it is important. The Governor's Council is essentially the only opportunity that the public, the general public, voters, citizens, residents of our Commonwealth have to have any sort of input whatsoever into the gubernatorial nominations. And that includes judges, parole board, industrial accident review board, appellate tax committee, tax board, and clerks magistrates, along with a number of other duties. So why would this be important? Well, first, in the case of judges, which I believe is the most important function and probably the most well-known function of the Governor's Council. There are other options, frankly, to have a Governor's Council, but here's why I think it's important. If you did not have the Governor's Council, another option would be to place that vetting and that public input into the hands of the Senate. That would potentially make it from, instead of 8 people, 40 people would have an opportunity to chime in. Obviously, the opportunity is ripe for politicizing things. I think 8 people rather than 40 is a better option. The other option, of course, would be to elect judges. I think that's probably one of the worst things you could possibly do. If you're somebody such as me, a progressive Democrat who feels that there's too much money and too much corrupting money in the political system, I think that electing judges is really not a good idea. You can take a look at how it works in Texas and other places, and I think it's pretty clear to most people, if you do take a look at that it's better to have a citizen board, a citizen council, the Governor's Council in this case, to vet candidates, to be respectful, to ask appropriate questions, to see if those candidates make sense for the positions they are aspiring to. And I look forward to talking more about that as we move along today.
Thank you very much. 1 minute rebuttal from Mrs. Devaney.
This is the only elected body directly accountable to the people who are the checks and balances for the governor's judicial appointments. And that's very important to have for all of these boards. It's not just judges, clerk magistrates. It is Industrial Accident Board, it's the Parole Board, Industrial Accident Board, Advisory Board, Appellate Tax Board. And it's very important that we represent the citizens and have that vote. And when we vote, it's a yes or no for that person to be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. It will be posed to you, Mrs. Devaney, first, and it concerns judicial nominations. Can you tell us about one judicial nomination you voted against within your tenure and explain your reasoning?
Okay, this is one that my opponent has really twisted the facts. It's Joseph Berman. And Joseph Berman, this is written by Councillor Robert Juvenville. He wrote this to newspapers, and he wrote it to the Lawyers Weekly, because the Globe and the Herald wrote about the hearing and never came, and it was all twisted. And when a couple of us wrote letters, they wouldn't print them. So here, and this is what I agree with. I mean, he was not qualified. He admitted he had no trial experience in that court. And the Superior Court has rapes and murders and you know, drug crimes and drug rings. And he said that, and he contributed so much money, you know, as we've agreed. And I wasn't the only one. The council voted against him. And so he tried to buy his way in, and then he lied and said that he didn't have anyone call, any prominent political officials to call councilors. And here Mr. Juvenville said that he did get a call, and finally he admitted it, and he tried to buy his way in. He was rejected before by the Judicial Nominating Committee for the District Court, and he was not qualified. And so we voted against him because he wasn't qualified, because he lied, and he was arrogant. When asked, is drug addiction criminal, or, in your opinion, criminal or medical? He shot back, I'm not a doctor, and no one in my family are drug addicted. So we don't want someone to learn on the job or buy their way in, and he did, over $100,000, and he bragged about his fundraising efforts, and so for the administration, and so I don't think this is what people want. I think they want someone that's experienced, and it's been twisted why I voted, and that's why I voted. He was not qualified. He lied. He tried to buy a judgeship, and quite honestly, it was all misrepresented. And I wish that the papers would come.
Sorry to have to cut you there. 1 minute rebuttal from Mr. Shapiro.
And I'll submit
Great,
this.
thank you. The Joseph Berman nomination was embarrassing on many levels. Number one, I would have voted for Mr. Berman. The incumbent voted against him. I would have voted for him for a number of different reasons. First of all, he was qualified. I also would have been the deciding vote for him if I had been on the Governor's Council at that time. My opponent did vote against him, but I believe did not fully do the research. She stated that she voted against him because he was a member of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, At the time, she did not appreciate that membership because the ADL did not recognize the Armenian genocide. After it was found out, unfortunately, that more research would have been necessary to show that he in fact helped the ADL recognize the genocide. So I believe that there was faulty research. I think I would do a better job. That's my answer.
Thank you very much, and we're just going to move right on. I'm sorry that it's not within the format today, but you can perhaps use one of your own questions. We'll be moving on to question 3 now, and that is for you, Mr. Shapiro, to answer first. Do you believe that the Governor's Council can do more to be more transparent and accessible to the residents of the Commonwealth? And if elected, would you pursue any changes? And please give us specifics.
Sure. Thank you very much. And just to add one more thing, because I think it goes directly into what is now the question on the table. Governor Patrick called the Berman nomination process disappointing and unfair. I would encourage people to Google the Globe, the Herald, even WBUR Radio, and do more research into that. And it goes directly to the question of transparency. Now, the Governor's Council is probably one of the most important positions that people are unfamiliar with. I'm a former teacher. I was a reporter. To me, I'm driven passionately to help what I believe is to improve, correct some of what the Governor's Council does, and I think there are a few ways we can do that. Number one, the Council meets during the week, generally on a Wednesday, during the workday, when most people, if they're employed, they frankly just don't have the ability to attend the council meetings. I think that we could webcast those meetings. It's not difficult, the technology is available, and that's something specific that I would like to do to make the council more transparent. Number two, my opponent, while I do certainly respect her service in the office for the past 16 years, I completely disagree with her position that she meets privately, out of the public view, with each and every nominee. She actually demands that of each nominee. The other 7 members of the council do not do that. I think that it's important that the Governor's Council meet publicly. There's a meeting as we tape this right now in Franklin County, where Councillor Jubenville and Councillor Albano are out there meeting the public, allowing them to have access to governor's councilors. My opponent decided that she did not like that type of external meeting away from Beacon Hill. She refused to participate. I think that transparency, frankly, is absolutely critical to enhancing the image of the Governor's Council, but more importantly than the image, you have to have faith in your governmental body and your governmental system. Going out and doing community meetings is something that's foundational to the democracy.
Thank you very much. 1 minute for rebuttal.
These are all lies. And Councillor Juvenville told me to tell Mr. Shapiro to stop telling lies about me and saying that he supports it and what he just said. I wasn't invited. That's something they do privately. I wasn't invited to that. But the point is, every single sitting councillor meets with nominees. Not just me, every one of them. And he is lying and saying that they don't. Okay? And also they have conversations on the phone. Because you know why? That's our due diligence. We're very unique. We only interview and we only vote on nominees. And I have found out when I have met, he says I have secret meetings and the 7 councilors opposed to it. And those councilors, 6 councilors are writing letters to the paper saying that they are appalled by the lies that he is saying, that I'm having secret meetings when every one of them have the same type of meetings as I do with nominees, and that he's saying that they agree with him when they have never talked with him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question, which will be directed to you, Mrs. Devaney, and that it is, what strategies would you use for working with others of opposing views, and what experience do you have implementing such strategies?
I don't understand that. Working with
others of opposing views? So how would you work with others of opposing views?
So we have had more tied votes with this council than the 30 previous years, and we respect each other. Councillor Cipollini, Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Jubenville, Councillor Duff, am I leaving someone out? Kennedy, Duff, Cipollini, they all endorse me, and we might vote on different, on different sides, and we respect each other. And that's how it is. We all do our due diligence. They might not meet with every nominee, but they meet with nominees and they talk with them on the phone, and they do the due diligence and interview them that way. And I have found out I have found out myself when I've interviewed someone that they lied, that they were, in the questionnaire it says, have you ever been terminated? And they said no. And then with the hearing, their partners came in and said they were terminated and so forth. It's not enough time to get into it, but we respect each other, and those 6 councilors are going to be writing letters because they are so upset that they are being included in his lies, opposing me when they endorse me, and I'm not doing anything that they're not doing, and there's so transparency. I meet with Justice Island in a diner in Watertown, and you know, you learn a lot. And the more you find out about the person, then the more, you know, more educated you are. And you have to do a lot more investigation, but that's part of it. And the councilors have all called me and told me, you know, Marilyn, it's time you talk up. You never mentioned your opponent, and he has his whole career that he has been 2 years, he has been saying things about you that are absolutely lies, and including us in it, and saying we agree with him when we have nothing to do with him. I've only got 2 minutes, 2 seconds, so I can't go on with
Thanks
that. But
very
thank you.
much. Rebuttal?
Sure. First of all, I'm not lying about anything whatsoever, and I would invite members of the public to either contact other counselors or to do research with the Globe, the Herald. You know, for example, the Globe and the Herald, which pretty much never agree on anything, as I said, have called it a dysfunctional circus. Now, I don't believe it's a complete dysfunctional circus, but I certainly think that more transparency, to go back to what your question was, James, does make some sense. I don't speak for other counselors, I don't speak for anybody but myself. I personally believe that meeting in private, out of the public view, is a disservice to constituents. The Judicial Nominating Commission, I think, appropriately meets in private. They're essentially the HR department. They're all attorneys, as I believe they should be. My opponent believes that that should be opened up to the general public. She's said that in various speeches. But again, do more research, and I look forward to the next question.
Thank you very much. And the next question is coming your way right now, and it is, do you think, it concerns pardons and commutations, do you think that the governor should consider more clemency appeals in Massachusetts? And please give us your reasoning.
Sure, it's a great question. I think that it's critically important for the governor, the state, representatives, all elected officials to take a very, very careful, considered, and thoughtful approach to who we put behind bars, first of all. I think that individual drug users, while they certainly may have individual personal issues that need to be worked through, don't really belong behind bars. I think our prisons are overcrowded. I think the best thing that we could do from a social aspect, from a humanistic aspect, would be to have a strong balance between compassion and public safety. It's absurd to lock someone away. It also goes to the mandatory minimums, by the way, which I'm against. I think judges should be given freedom and flexibility to be judges and make those appropriate judgments. And I think I would put the governor in that space as well, where people need to be given the opportunity to get help, to get counseling. And on the fiscal side of things, I also think it makes a lot of sense because it can cost $50,000 plus to put somebody in prison for a year, and it's actually less money, more productive, and the right thing to do to give people the counseling, the drug rehabilitation, the job training that they need to be productive members of society. So the answer is all of that, actually, I think fits into your question. I think we all need to be more diligent about that. As a member of the Governor's Council, I can assure you that I will speak up on this type of issue, and there are many other issues that I would also like to speak out on, but it's not necessarily just speaking out. It's being thoughtful, grounded. This is no place for drama. It doesn't belong there. This needs to be a thoughtful, deliberative body. That's the type of change I will make, and I will contribute to the Governor's Council, if given the opportunity, of course.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Devaney, 1 minute rebuttal.
Would you repeat that question? Because I thought you talked about commutations, not what the answer
Yeah, do you
is.
think that the governor should consider more clemency appeals in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question. My opponent didn't. Governor Weld stopped that whole thing about commutations with this war on crime, and it's unfortunate because I get calls from, an 80-year-old man saying that he is waiting for his son to to be, so that he can go on with his life and get this clemency, to get this, to be able to vote, to be able to go on with his life. And I can't do anything about it because it's the governor that's done it. And I have gone back with Governor Cellucci to ask him for commutations for people and pardons. And so we only, in my 15 years, we only had about 10. And because Weld did that, all the governors are reluctant to do it, but we should be doing it. We should be looking at some of these people that really should be. They're outstanding citizens. They're working.
If you wouldn't mind, the next question is, please explain the judicial appointment review process and how the governor's council's responsibilities differ from or overlap with those of the Judicial Nominating Commission.
Well, the Judicial Nominating Commission are lawyers who meet in private, who are nameless, faceless, and they interview the nominees. We don't know who's in the pool, we don't know who's rejected and who they interview, and then they make the recommendation to the governor, and then the governor makes that recommendation to us. So we only got that one person. We don't know who's in the pool. Maybe there's people that are more, qualified or whatever. We don't know. We just have this one to judge. And so that's our responsibility without any staff to do our own due diligence. And as my opponent has smeared the whole council, because every councilor meets with nominees and talks to them on the phone, as I do, but he's only pointed me out as secret meetings, and all the other councilors are against it, which is not true. And they'll be writing, they're writing a letter right now about it, opposed to my opponent. But the point is that it is an awesome responsibility, and I want to make sure that we have the best. So when I meet with someone, one time I found out someone who lied and a couple of times and said that they had all this experience. I got in my car and I went out there and investigated, and we found out. And learning that, the governor withdrew that appointment. But it's very important, honesty, and we've got to make sure that they're truthful about when they answer those questions, and you have to look into that. So another thing is, because of my years on the council, people trust me and they call me if they know something about a candidate or whatever, and I don't take that in face value. I investigate, and when I have someone, I look into the Judicial Nominating Commission's questionnaire and our questionnaire, and go out the people that know them and they work with and everything. It is a lot of work, and we are there 12 months a year. We have 2 last week, 2 this week, and it's continual. And so it takes a lot of,
Thank you very much.
As I said,
it's time, and we're going to move to a rebuttal now. 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. I think you can tell by this debate that this council can be politically charged. It can be very energetic. I think that we need to reduce the drama and be more forthright in the way that this area of government functions. It would be my hope that people would do as much research as possible on this council, on me, on the incumbent. I think that the thoughtfulness, I think the calmness, and I think the deliberative way that I go about doing business is not only straightforward, it's critically important on such an important council as the Governor's Council. So there are no smears. I have conducted a very respectful campaign. In fact, my opponent, who also challenged the incumbent 2 years ago, has just endorsed me. And we can talk more about that as well. But I'm very grateful for that broad-based support.
Okay. Thank you very much. And before I ask the next question, I just want to remind both of you and ask and request that you do your best to be responsive to the question asked.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right.
The next question is, most people do not know a lot, and I know you alluded to this before, about the Massachusetts Governor's Council. How would you describe its role and responsibility, and why should Massachusetts residents be informed about that role and the decision-making happening?
Great. Is this to me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'll answer that, and I'll also combine that with the part that I may have left out of the previous answer with the Judicial Nominating Commission. We were talking about that, and since voting on various nominations for judges is so critically important to this council, I think it is important that also people know how the process works. The Judicial Nominating Commission is, in fact, all attorneys. They vet people. They are members of the Bar Association. You know, as I said, I'm not an attorney, neither is my opponent. I'm a former teacher and a reporter, so I believe wholeheartedly in transparency and also getting the word out on the council and how it's important and how it affects our daily lives. So the JNC is the first step. They send the name to the governor. The governor then chooses a name or does not, and goes back to the JNC in some cases. If the governor chooses somebody, the governor's council is not supposed to view itself as selecting judges. I think that's a very overblown way to look at this. The governor's council, to me, was established in the Massachusetts Constitution back in the 1600s, actually, as a way to make sure that the general public had input. So when we are voting, when the governor's council is voting on individuals, that's the opportunity to be the citizen's representative. And that's just simply not happening to the degree that I believe I can make that happen. My experience as a reporter, as a teacher, as someone who follows these issues, follows these nominations, follows the governor's council, I am ready to hit the ground running. There'll be a lot of new nominations. I think we have an opportunity now to have a fresh start with a new governor, a fresh start as new members on the council, and I would really appreciate people's support in Arlington and in the entire district to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 1 minute of rebuttal.
Would you repeat the question, because it gets kind of muddied?
Yes, it has to do with that most people don't know a lot about the governor's council, and how do you describe the role and responsibility of the council? And why should Massachusetts residents be informed about its role and decision-making?
I think that we have already covered that, but I think it's most important to have a knowledge of the Governor's Council when you're running for the position. And when this studio asked my opponent, what would you look for in a judge, he couldn't answer. He didn't answer you. And at a forum in a couple of months ago, he was asked, in the last 7 years, how many judges would you have voted against? He said, I don't know. I mean, it's the lack of knowledge of the Governor's Council that this isn't, you know, I wish that he had spent the time learning of what we really do instead of making up stories about me and about the councilors. And it's really disturbing. I mean, I tried to get the word out, but I have 800,000 people in my district. I don't have the money or the resources to do that. So I go out and I go out to the courts to see how things are going and seeing how these judges are treating people, because I want them to be respectful. I do.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And we'll move on. The next question goes to you, Mrs. Devaney, and it is, topically,
Councillor,
from what you just said, what criteria would you use in determining who is qualified to be a judge?
I look for the specific position that they are applying for. If they're applying to the Superior Court, as we talked about Berman, he didn't have any of those qualifications. He never had any cases. You know, there's murder cases and there's rape cases and there's drug rings, and you have to have someone for that. I will not vote for someone for a juvenile court, for example, who hasn't had that expertise in there. You've asked this before, so my opponent has learned from my answer from our last interview. But and the district court is a people's court, and that's where, you know, people come to, whether it's you know, divorce or whether it's a restraining order and all of those things. So it depends on what it is. The SJC, the most important court, but I look for honesty, I look for fairness, I look for temperament and demeanor, but they have to be qualified. And I'm not going to, we are the most non-political council that you have ever seen. I mean, imagine having after 30 years, having the most tied votes. So we do our job, and there's no politics involved, and I will not vote for. In fact, the Lowell's son endorsed me, and I got gerrymandered out of their district, and they said I should remain there because I brought reforms, I brought transparency, and I won't vote for political positions, nominees. So I think, I think I stand on that, and I'm very proud of this council, and I really abhorred that this opponent would say things that are not true about the council, and then switch it around and say that they're opposed to me. So it's, it's like, when did you stop beating your kids, Councillor Devaney? And so it's a very difficult position to be in, because it just keeps coming. And I wish that he had more knowledge of the Governor's Council.
Thank you very much. Moving to you for a 1-minute rebuttal, Mr. Shapiro.
Great. I'm actually disappointed that it's sort of a combative type of thing. I do think that when we focus on the question in this case, I agree with my opponent on honesty, their temperament, and fairness. I think she is absolutely correct on that. The first step, of course, is I would review the information provided by the JNC. This is a body of attorneys who are highly professional, as I said, members of the Bar Association. They have gone to great length and a lot of work to make sure that they are only putting forth names of individuals that are in fact qualified. That's the first thing. Second, I would make sure that I am in touch with all 32 cities and towns in the Governor's Council district. I would solicit input from various folks in and out of the legal profession. I would listen very carefully. I would have interviews completely in public, never privately, out of public view. And I think that that would be a terrific start to improving things on the council.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, which is directed to you again, Mr. Shapiro. Tell us about one accomplishment in the past year that you are particularly proud of, and why.
Sure. There's a few. First of all, I just celebrated my 24th wedding anniversary last week, and I am very proud of that. I love my wife Debbie very much. We have 2 kids. My son David is 23, my daughter Rebecca is 18. My son graduated college and got a job. I would venture to say that is probably mostly on his own efforts, but I would like to think that my wife and I had something to do with helping him have the right values and work real hard at what he tried to do. My daughter Rebecca is in college, and so I'm so proud that this relationship has lasted 24 years and hopefully another 24 years. So I'm very proud of that. On a professional level, in my day job, I have a company called Mass Media. It's been there for 25 years. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary of being in business. So that's 2 anniversaries recently, actually, that I'm proud of. And what Mass Media does and what my day job is, I work from home, by the way, so I have time to do all these other things that I'm trying to improve. But what my company does is we focus on higher education marketing. We do some marketing for various community colleges. And I also was instrumental in establishing one of the largest national scholarship programs for women, minority, returning veterans through the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, which is one of the largest trade schools that helps people get into the broadcasting industry, and that's a place I used to teach. So I'm actually very proud of my personal life. I'm very proud of my family, certainly. I'm so grateful that they're putting up with all of this crazy political stuff so that I will have an opportunity to improve things on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I may have just given you 3 or 4 things, but I'm actually proud of a lot. And I'm also proud to have such broad-based support in this race. I've worked very, very hard. I have done reams of research, and I'm being very straightforward and factual.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Devaney, an accomplishment of which you are proud from the last year.
I'm the proudest that I have voted historically for the first Black Chief Justice, for the first first African American Chief Justice, the first Jewish Chief Justice, the first openly gay, this is on the SJC, highest court, and the first Asian, and now the first African-American woman, Justice Hines, whose grandmother was a daughter of slaves, and I have voted for her 3 times 2001, when I first met her to the Superior Court, she had hundreds of civil cases, civil of criminal, and she overturned a murder case. And then I voted for the appeals court and now the SJC. And now we have 5 women up there. Not that I voted because there were 5 women, but they're outstanding. But I just want to say also, the JNC has recommended nominees that governors had to withdraw, had dropped because of false information.
The next question,
Thank you.
Sorry. And that is, and it is directed to you, Mrs. Devaney, and it is, do you believe that charges from critics that members of the governor's council...
what critics?
Sorry, do you believe that charges from critics that members of the Governor's Council pursue personal political agendas rather than offering thoughtful and valuable advice, do you believe those charges are justified or not?
Probably in the old days, which the Herald and the Globe still write about, and I beg them to come, but they won't come, so they write all these things about hearings they've never come to. As my opponent talks about a hearing he never attended. This council is the best, and I am so honored to be among them, and there's no political agenda. They are the hardest working people, and looking into this, we look into the JNC questionnaire and go through that and go through all the people and question, and also, our questionnaire, and, and I know they do. I go out into my, my district and I get calls, and you can't televise it. You can't talk to someone and have it televised. And so I talk with, whether it's people that know them, that work with them, lawyers or whatever. So you go out and you talk to people and you get that input. But you build trust, and then people call you and tell you the good and the bad about these, and then these nominees, and you investigate. But I can say, I don't know one who is in there for political reasons, maybe in yesteryear, but they're there to be a governor's counselor, and that's what they ran for. This wasn't something that they lost an election for and jumped into this. They are there to serve the people. It's really upsetting to see the Globe and the Herald write about yesteryear councils, because that's how it used to be. But it's not that way, and we are respectful. And today, for the first time, I have always talked about myself, never my opponent. He's ran twice against me. But in his interview, he attacked 30 minutes bringing up lies and fabricating stories about the councilors opposing me and supporting him and all of that. And so I'm here to say, let's clear the record. And I've never talked about anyone except myself and the Governor's Council. But you know what? It's time.
Thank you very much. 1 minute rebuttal.
Sure. First, I've never said anything about what other councilors have said. I think that is for them to speak for themselves. I would never presume to speak for them in one direction or another. The incumbent, I should say, has been there for 16 years. 15 and a half years. The Globe and the Herald articles were in the past 2 years. They were not talking about a council in 10 or 12 or 14 years ago or 17 years ago. They were talking about a council in current time. And I would just ask that people, again, do research. I think the more research that people do, the better I know I'll feel, and certainly the more informed people will be. We have a real opportunity to make improvement here. I'm working very hard to do that, and I would appreciate people's support.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to this, which is the last of the prepared questions, and will be directed to you, Mr. Shapiro. Some critics are concerned that the Governor's Council costs taxpayers about $400,000 every year for a council with limited power. Do you agree or disagree with that sentiment?
The sentiment that it costs that much, or that it's too much?
That it's too much. That people are concerned that the cost is that high for a council with limited power. Sure.
No, I don't think that's really the case. I mean, there are times when you might disagree with the legislature and feel that it's not functioning the way you'd like to see, and the legislature is obviously more money than that to have every year. The executive branch is more money than that to run every year. I think that what happens in many cases is when a body, a council in this case, is perceived by the public to not be functioning at its highest possible level, I think that it opens up the topic to be ripe for calling for its disbandment. And I think that that's something that motivates me to explain to folks, we mentioned it earlier by the way, but to explain to folks why this is an important investment. Now, obviously it's part of the Massachusetts Constitution, so it really is not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. But I think that it's not a matter of how much does the council cost, it's how much would it cost and what would be the negatives if it wasn't functioning. And right now it is functioning, certainly, and there are some absolutely wonderful counselors that are doing great jobs. In fact, I mentioned it a little bit earlier for folks that may just be tuning in right now. I mentioned that Bob Jubenville and also Councillor Mike Albano from Western Mass are doing new cutting-edge things. Franklin County today is the very first time in history that the council went out and had community meetings. Now, I think that's a wonderful idea. I would participate in that. The incumbent decided not to. I don't know whether an invitation was extended or not. She can certainly answer to that herself. I would not presume to know that. But certainly, I know that any counselor that wants to go to any meeting would be very, very welcome by other counselors to also attend such meetings. And if they weren't welcome, well, that would bring up another question altogether.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And 1 minute for rebuttal, Mrs. Devaney.
No other councils were invited. But I just want to say, when I first met with my opponent, he approached me at an event, and he was running for a second term as an alderman, and he told me I was wonderful, I did a wonderful job, I was respectful, and he would be so honored if I would give his name as an endorsement. And I did. And he lost. And a month after he lost, he was campaigning against me for governor's council. I was great in November, and now he was saying all of these terrible, horrific things about me, just the opposite of what he said he was running. So it appears that he's just an opportunist. He just wants to run for an office, and that's it. And you know, the mayor endorsed his opponent, which is unprecedented. Seti Warren endorsed someone against an alderman who he was serving with. So, I mean, I didn't know him. He didn't have an opponent at the time. And then this other man, wonderful man, Dr. Schwartz, ran. But I'm just saying, that's this has been
Thank you
how
very
it's
much.
been going.
We're
It's
going
just
to
negative.
move on to the next segment of the debate, and that allows each of you to ask the other 2 questions, one at a time,
thought it
in
was one.
alternating fashion.
2 questions. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And we will begin with you, Mrs. Devaney, posing a question to Mr. Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro, you will have 2 minutes to respond to that question, and Mrs. Devaney, 30 seconds, excuse me, for a rebuttal to that response. Please proceed.
How important is it to you to have, how important it is, do you think it is for honesty in a campaign?
Well, I think it's critical. I think that, for example, when people are endorsing, I think it's very important to make sure that we are honest in such a basic thing. For example, the Stonewall Democrats have not actually endorsed in this race.
I have been told by Holly.
I would just respectfully say that what Ms. Devaney is referring to is Holly Ryan, who is a member of the Newton Rights Commission and a leader in the LGBT community, who is in fact publicly supporting me. Now, that does not mean to imply a Stonewall Democrats endorsement as a group, but it does mean, for example, they have not endorsed as a group. This individual has endorsed me, and I'm very proud to have the support of people in the LGBTQ community. I think that's very important. I have been endorsed by a whole slew of people. I would invite everyone and anyone when they go to my website to take a look at the endorsements. We're updating that page right now by the time you watch this debate, and I would invite you to call, contact, email all of the folks that have endorsed me, anybody you'd like to. They are very passionate about seeing change on the council. So we talk about honesty. That was the question that the incumbent asked, and I think honesty is critical. I think that there are things that have been done that have been dishonest. I think that there are things that have been done that have been unnecessarily dramatic. I think there are things that can be done much, much better. I will always be honest about everything that I am saying, and frankly, if I don't have enough information to completely explain something, I will ask additional questions. Honesty is the foundation. It's what we should expect from candidates, elected officials, for people who are up for nominations that are in front of the Governor's Council. Honesty is definitely number one.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Mr. Shapiro, let's make a deal. If you stop telling lies about me, I'll stop telling the truth about you. And you continue from the time that you asked me for my endorsement, how wonderful I was, and then how bad I was afterwards. You have just continued. It just goes on and on. And it reminds me of the old, Joseph McCarthy era. Have you no sense of decency? That you are saying these lies about me. Just in Newton last week, you told them
we need
7
to move on to the
were
next
against
question.
me.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We need to move on. You have a question to ask of Mrs. Devaney.
Sure. Thank you. Well, the question is this. First, could you please describe your position clearly on a woman's right to choose?
Absolutely. I have demonstrated my position on the right to choose. I have been there. I stood on the stage with my colleagues. I have been personally, charged targeted by mass resistance, and they put a suit into the Superior Court because I supported, and they told me if I voted they would do it, and they threw it out. But I voted for Attorney Salinger, who was the person for the Attorney General that brought the 35 buffer zone into court. And I supported him. And they said if I voted for him, anti-family and all of that, that they would vote against me. I have taken on mass resistance. I have taken on when I have voted for gay members and they have targeted me. I have stood up. I have stood up for them, and all my life I have. I've stood up for the Commission of Disabilities, for those with disabilities. Got awarded, I was elected 24 years in the Watertown Council and got awarded from a community citizen group as a watchdog. I stand up for for all people and rights, and this has been something that is important to, and even on my auxiliary on the American Legion for veterans, to make sure that they're getting the benefits of what we see is happening. And I'm also in for fatherhood, to have equal rights too. So I've been there for men, for women, for those who are disabled, for veterans, and for workers. I mean, I'm endorsed by the professional firefighters, by carpenters, NAGE, and as I said, a member of the Stonewall has said that that I am and I have that I have been endorsed, and also I am endorsed by members of that Stonewall.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Steve
Shapiro.
Driscoll, so many
excuse
others.
me, Mr. Shapiro, 1 minute for rebuttal. 30 seconds.
I'm not sure I can really add that much to that. All I would say is please check into the endorsements, and I think we could probably actually at this point move on to the next question. The only thing that I would add is that the incumbent was in fact endorsed by Mass Pro-Life in 2010. I don't know, I can't speak for her, what her positions are, but I can simply point people to that fact and that they congratulated her on her win.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a rebuttal?
No, but you do have a chance to ask a question yourself.
Okay, then I won't answer that because that was for being independent.
If you can
it had
just
nothing to do
ask
with
the question,
women's
please.
rights. How long did it take for you, a month after you said I was so wonderful, I was so respectful, that you supported me for Governor's Council, and you were so proud if I would add your name to endorsement, when you didn't have an incumbent at that time? And how did I go from being such a wonderful council that you supported and respectful, and then after you lost that, you looked around and said, gee, what can I run for? And then you said all of these horrible things about me and that I must be replaced.
Your answer?
Sure, my answer is I found out that she had been endorsed by Mass Pro-Life, and that goes against my core values, my very core values. I believe proudly in a woman's right to choose. I believe that we should be asking judges whether they will enforce the buffer zone, which is now law once again. You know, there are things that you learn along the way. And I, frankly, probably made a mistake by asking for Ms. Devaney's endorsement before I did enough research on her. And I'll take the hit for that. I should have done more research, and I apologize for that. However, what I would say is that when it comes to a woman's right to choose, I did not hear a specific answer. I believe she mentioned she was recognized by various people, but I did not hear a specific answer. So my feeling is that there is nothing more sacred than individual rights, and a woman's right to choose is certainly there. Individual rights to marry the person that you love. I believe that marriage equality is something that is sacred. I believe that adoption, equality in adoption opportunity, is also sacred. And I come to that not because of what's being referred to as political reasons. I was adopted when I was 11 months old, actually, just prior to a year, 11 months old. And so, you know, I actually feel as though I was given opportunities. Growing up in Newton, I jokingly sometimes say that I hit the parental lottery, and I really believe that. And I want everybody to have an opportunity to grow up in a safe community with judges and others that we're entrusting to ensure social justice, economic justice. And the reason why I am running for governor's council is exactly that. I am passionate about this. I ran 2 years ago, and I can mention a little bit more about that if there's time. The incumbent was reelected with only 40% of the vote. 60% wanted another choice, and I hope this year I'm that
Thank you
choice.
very much.
Thank you.
And 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Very small turnout last time, but I just want to say that first of all, that endorsement he talked about, we don't know where that came from, but reps and councilors got that for being independent. It had nothing to do with a woman's body or whatever. But I have stood up, I have been there, I have been on stage, I have taken the knocks in the last 15 years because I have supported these people who have been absolutely pro-choice, and I stand with them.
Thank you very much. And we will conclude this section with one more question for you to pose to Mrs. Devaney, Mr. Shapiro.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to the Joseph Berman nomination for this particular question. I think it was a turning point over the past year or so. I would like to ask Ms. Devaney, when she publicly stated that she would vote against him because he was a member of the ADL at a time the Armenian genocide was not being recognized by the ADL, was that really just because there's a large Watertown constituency?
Thank you.
I said at the hearing, and you can come into the State House and listen to the tape, he never came to the hearing.
I did.
And I said, you weren't at that first hearing. And so I said, even though I said I have a bias against the ADL working against a congressional resolution recognizing the Armenian genocide, I will have an open mind on Joseph Berman, and that's what I said, and he keeps twisting that, and you know there's not much I can do about that, but you know it's when he keeps coming back to this, and we have this from a council who wrote this in newspapers and everything, why we voted against him. And Mr. Shapiro came into while I was presiding over the highest position, judicial position in Massachusetts, Judge Gantz, he came in and he solicited his flyers to interns and told them all these things that I had said at Berman's hearing and how bad I was. The intern said, you weren't even at the hearing, and I was, and she didn't say that. And this is, I could have, if I was misspirited, I could have had him removed. He went up to Councilor Cipollini and says, how do I get elected? This is in the State House. And so I'm just saying that this is outrageous. And these people have reported it. you know, back to the office. And Mr. Cipollini is of the finest quality of honesty, and he's nodding his head. And so I'm saying, is this the way, is this the kind of person we want to come in to the State House to give out, you know, to badmouth the President Governor's Council and make up these lies that she never said when the intern happened to be at the hearing and he wasn't? And again, the Globe and the Herald never came, and we wrote letters to correct that, because I said I would have an open mind. But that never got in the paper, it never got corrected, and he keeps saying it, but he doesn't come into the council to listen to the tape.
Thank you very much. 30-second rebuttal.
Thank you, James. I've been to a number of the meetings. I did speak with interns during a break in the council meetings, and I did in fact describe some of what I'm trying to do to improve the council. When they asked if I had any information during the break in the meeting, I did in fact give them some information about myself, and they were interested. I think that we need to get away from the drama. We need to get away from this. We need to be more thoughtful. I'll bring that.
Thank you very much. And we're going to move right to closing statements as we're very short on time. So, Mrs. Devaney, you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Okay. Anytime that I make a decision on any position, I have you in mind. I accept your calls. I go out into the district. I investigate, I get into my car, whatever information I get, I make sure that it is truthful. I don't think this is the time for someone to learn the job. He couldn't answer, my opponent couldn't answer what questions he would ask, what he would look for in a judge. He couldn't answer who he would vote against in the last 7 years. His lack of knowledge of the counselor is apparent when he says that I have secret meetings, meeting with nominees, and when all my other counselors do. And he just recently said in Newton that the 7 counselors are opposed to what I'm doing, and they agree with him. And they are going to write a letter, and they are in the process to say that. I am very proud of what I've done, and when I vote no, I am respectful. And this is the first time I ever have referred to my opponent.
Sorry to cut you off there. 1 minute for closing statement.
Great. Well, thank you to you, James. Thank you to Arlington Community Media. And also thank you to my opponent, Ms. Devaney, for this opportunity. The voters will have a choice. You will have a choice this September 9th. There are 2 Democrats on the ballot. I am the progressive, pro-choice Democrat. I am the person on the ballot that will make sure that your rights are protected, that your questions are asked, that you have the ability to participate in the Governor's Council meetings. There are some state reps who have endorsed me. Frank Smizek, a very respected state rep from Brookline. John Lawn, who is from Watertown, the incumbent's hometown, has endorsed me. Alice Peisch from Wellesley has endorsed me. And Jay Kaufman from Lexington. All those state reps have endorsed me. I am so proud of that. I also have the endorsement of Harry Margolis. You may remember him. He is a very well-respected attorney who also ran for this position 2 years ago. I have his endorsement, and I thank him for that. The election is September 9th.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. We want to thank both of the candidates for being here today for this spirited conversation, which has certainly informed our viewing public. And we want to thank you for joining us. Don't forget to exercise your own right to vote out at the primary on September 9th. Thank you for joining us again for Arlington Public News. I'm James Malan.